I'm psychologist Dr. Bryan Violet, and today I'll be sitting down with longtime friend and former tennis pro, Andrew Salak. We will be talking about his former tennis career and how that has affected his current career in wealth management. We'll also be talking about his eclectic spirituality and the implications for his approach to dealing with grief. And finally, on our Cinder in a Movie, we'll be discussing one of my favorites, A Bronx Tale. This is the Catholic Center Show.
When does the joke come about that I change outfits from segment one to segment two?
We have a wardrobe.
We have a wardrobe
swap between segments.
Andrew Salak's the only guest that has his own stylist that changes outfits.
Pause for makeup. Yeah, so this is all coming together in a very, I would argue, providential way. Because I don't think people realize how much work and time and effort it takes between our now, and when an episode is released.
Right.
So today, for us, is December 8th.
Yes.
Big day. So December 8th is, from a Catholic perspective, it's the Feast of the Immaculate Conception. That's a huge deal. It's one of the few days every year that you're obligated to go to Mass. It's my birthday. I'm 25 today.
Lies.
And
happy birthday, by the way.
Thank you very much. And it's the launch of the Catholic Center Show. So we just went live, actually.
Yeah.
In the background of this conversation. And
super exciting. Congrats, by the way.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So what happened was we recorded this episode. We recorded an episode 3-4 weeks ago, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the audio for the first half of it wasn't there. There was no audio. And the second half was great.
Did we double check that there's audio now, by the way?
I'm hoping.
Triple check?
I'm hoping. Yeah. I'll give you a call later to come back. Yeah. So it didn't work. So that's why we're wearing different clothes, because we're going back and re-recording the first half again. And hopefully we can experience the magic once again.
Totally.
But the interesting part about this whole thing was you hadn't realized it was my birthday when we had planned a week ago for you to come tonight.
No.
Right? Or that it was the launch or any of this stuff.
No.
And so I texted you and you're like, oh, I didn't realize it was your birthday today. Like, this is going to be great. I'm like, yeah, and there's some other things going on. And then you said to me, it's also my grandfather's birthday.
I know.
And so we did not talk about this, really. A little bit later on. You'll see a little discussion about your grandfather later on.
Okay, cool.
But I think we need to just take a moment to honor the fixture.
I'd love to.
That your grandfather was in our social circle.
Yes.
A beloved man that influenced you very deeply.
Totally. Yeah, no. It's cool. He would have been 102 years old today. I reached out to my cousins and my family, just kind of reminding everyone that he was, today was his birthday, December 8th. And so my cousin Mike, actually kind of interestingly enough, with my grandfather, and the name Salak, my last name, carries on through my cousin Mike's son, Jack. He was born today, so it's my cousin Mike's son, Jack's birthday also. Turned 7 years old today. But when Mike was deciding on names, they were contemplating, and they liked, they actually didn't realize the birthday. It came to the last minute. And December 8th, I said, that's Didush's grandfather in Ukrainian, so we called him Didush. And I said, that's Didush's birthday.
Vladimir? Do I remember that?
Volodymyr.
Yes.
Volodymyr,
yes.
Yep. Which is, kind of the Ukrainian version of Walter. Yes. Right. So,
what a great name.
Yeah. So speaking of the name, so my cousin Mike names his son Jack and gave Walter as the middle name as a tribute.
It's brilliant.
To my grandfather, to also my cousin Mike's also his grandfather. And at the time, so I had Joy, I had my older daughter. Now we have two daughters. And that's most likely it for Lauren and I. And my cousin Mike, this was
never know.
Never know. My cousin Tina had 3 girls on the Salak. There's branches of Salak. There's only 4 people, that have the ability to then carry through.
Yeah.
And it's Jack he's the one, the only child at this point that is a male that has the last name Salak, and his middle name is Walter. So it kind of all ties in so nicely together.
Yeah.
And super cool. And I did remember when I did today, I'm like, oh, it's December 8th. I do remember the connection that you have the same birthday as my grandfather.
Yeah.
So today is a very special day.
Very special day.
And I just owe a lot to my grandfather, and he was, to your point about a fixture within our friend groups. It's interesting, not only just Wethersfield and growing up in Connecticut and our friends here, but even like all of my college friends. also.
Oh, yeah.
Like, remember my grandfather very
he
much.
really impacted a lot of people.
Yeah.
There's something about his personality there was just a likability. There was a sort of command about him.
Yeah.
He was the Paterfamilia, you know. He was
Right.
He was the father of the family.
Yeah.
And he was very much a father figure to you.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Beyond just like Gramps, you know what I mean? Like he was part of
Totally.
your own development.
Totally.
Into becoming a man.
Right.
What would you say, like, if you had to distill what you learned from him, whether it's like a value or a virtue or something he used to say, like what have you inherited from him?
Yeah. No, it's a great question, and I love that we're talking about him right now, and it just feels so fitting that we are. But he was a person who was very selfless. He always he thought about other people all the time. He was also very, you said the word already, kind of likable, but he was out in the community, like the Ukrainian American community. He was known by everyone. But he just enjoyed having conversations and being social, and he liked to be out. I used to joke with my family because after church would get out on Sundays, all the church community would kind of pour out into the patio there and the sidewalk, and some families would just get in their cars and go home. But my grandfather and some of his friends, like, they would hold court, and it's like we'd go to church on Sunday. And I always used to joke, I'm like, do you go to church because, of the church aspect, or because you and your friends are hanging out for an hour after church, which is part of...
The answer to that is yes.
Yeah. But that's all part of the community and the church and everything, right? So I think, I used to watch this and observe as a child, my grandfather being very charismatic and just being likable, and just, people would want to hang out. And I also am someone who just likes to hang out. And
yeah, but you have definitely inherited his social grace. I mean, just walking through my house to come down here to record this, you stopped and gave a nod and asked it like a relevant, important question to everyone, from my kids to our babysitter to my wife. Like, you really know how to connect with people. That's got to come from him.
Thank you. Yeah, partially, for sure, if not all of it. Yeah, and I've observed that. It was really cool to watch him, and he had this kind of charm about him too, which, I'm not going to sit here and say that I have that same thing, but I just would watch him with people, and it was just, I feel like people wanted to be around him. And I've actually had other family and relatives of ours say similar things to how, Andrew, something that you definitely inherited from your grandfather, something that you probably, learned by observing or saw kind of like how he would be in big social settings, is just that ability to connect with people and ask questions, and just, genuinely, I love being around people.
And express genuine interest in other people's lives.
Yeah, he did have that.
It's not superficial. You remember, the name of our friend's third kid, like sometimes that's hard to do, you know, as the social group expands, but you seem to care about everybody you encounter.
Thanks, Bryan. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
He had this great moment, which you were there for it, I'm sure, is my college graduation party on Griswold Road, where the house I grew up in, and it was a pool party. If you weren't there, you certainly were invited, but maybe you actually were there. And there was a whole mix of high school friends, college friends, neighbors, family, friends of friends. There must have been well over 100 people for sure.
Yeah.
And people, we had music going, we had the drinks were flowing, people were in the pool. It was loud. It was like a big outdoor house party. It was huge.
Yeah.
And at one point,
he was very generous with that. With
he
your
was.
house, allowing us to party. Maybe before we should have been partying. Yeah.
Right. But I remember, and friends still talk about this, is he kind of went out towards the front of the pool at one point because it was important for him. We had such a tight bond, like you said. He really was like a father figure for me. I think
I remember this.
It was important for him to acknowledge the reason that people were there, and he wanted to put me, on a platform to kind of congratulate me on graduating from Fordham University. And it's the craziest thing. My cousin Steven actually has this on video because he was walking around with a video camera that day, and my grandfather just went out to the front of the pool, I'll never forget it, in a hectic scene, and just kind of raised his hand up.
Everybody silence. Yeah.
And people would start tapping each other. Hey, Andrew's grandfather.
The respect,
wants to say something, and within seconds, it felt like everybody was quiet.
You hear a pin drop.
Yeah.
I remember this.
Pin drop, you do?
Yeah.
And he just, it's great. He just said, listen, thanks everybody for coming, and, really proud of my grandson. It was such a powerful moment. It was really, really cool. And that was to your point earlier about how he kind of, he had that persona, and, he was able to take a party like that and literally just by raising his hand.
It's so interesting. It speaks to me of almost like a lost art in being a man nowadays.
Yeah.
Which is to have both elements of a personality which is worthy of respect,
right,
and command,
right,
and strength and self-governance, right? But also the capacity to be tender and accessible and warm.
And yeah,
And not one or the other.
right.
A lot of men out there today are one or the other, right? It's kind of like a softer personality and emotionality.
Yeah.
Or they're, kind of macho and egotistical and inaccessible. But the real development of psychological maturity is to have that integration of both.
Right.
And your grandfather had that.
That is a good point. No, it's true. That's almost kind of like you're more of a man. You're a real man if you can have that balance.
Yeah, I think of think of football as an analogy.
Right.
There are quarterbacks that can throw the football, 80 yards.
Right.
And there are quarterbacks that can throw with pinpoint accuracy.
Yep.
But the best of the best can throw with 80 yards with pinpoint accuracy. So it's the power and the finesse.
Power and finesse, for sure.
What a great segue. On many levels, because the other thing, of course, I want to talk to you about, something you are well known for and is associated with you, and that's tennis.
Tennis, yeah.
And I know he was a big part of the origins of your tennis career, right?
Totally.
What's your first memory of playing tennis? Was he there?
Yeah. My grandfather, certainly got me into tennis. He got into it later in life himself, which is kind of cool because, right, tennis is a lifetime sport. Like, not a lot of sports are ones that you can play forever, really.
Right.
But he really got passionate about the sport later in life, and so, he got me out on the courts at an early age. I think I was probably 5 or 6 years old, and I really just fell in love with it early on. I mean, I just really loved the sport, and it was great for our relationship just because he also loved it, and he could see how much I loved it, and then we were able to share that love together and play. So my mom certainly also was very integral there too, and getting me out on the courts. But yeah, I was just at an early age getting out there. And then it just kind of continued to blossom from there. I mean, I found out probably maybe when I was, maybe like 10, 11 years old or so that I had like a good talent for it, and I was getting really good at that point.
Yeah. So just let me pause for a sec. So I always wondered whether tennis for you was something you were forced into, because you took it pretty far. And a lot of times you have these young prodigies, right, that are really successful, the Tiger Woods of the world, but you hear, I just think like Tiger Woods or like Michael Jackson, right, where they're so good because it was forced upon them at a young age. That was not your experience?
No, and I did see that in tennis. I mean, it's every sport, but tennis for sure. Growing up playing the junior tournaments, I saw a lot of these kids that were being forced into it. And some of them were actually the best, and they were very good because they were forced to play a lot. I mean, you can get good at things if the repetition and doing them, doing that, playing tennis, for example, being on the court for hours a day, obviously, you can get good. But no, I was not forced into it. I genuinely loved it.
That's why you still do.
And I still play a lot. Like my mom always talks about how, like, in the summertime, I would never, it was a challenge to get me to finish my dinner plate, because I knew that it was in the summer after dinner every night. We'd either go to, typically it was Goodwin Park, but we would go to like these different parks where there was games, and I was dying to go play. And so my grandfather and I would go, and I was like kind of one of the kids that was, a fill-in. So it's like older guys that would go to play in the evenings. And if there was 3 and they needed a 4th, I would, little Andrew would jump off the bench and go fill in.
Yeah.
So I feel like even to this day, I'm not burnt out. I still love it. I just always enjoyed the sport.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how you can. It's like golf, where you can play as you get older, and I'm always amazed by. I marvel at these older folks where they can't really move around the court, but talk about pinpoint accuracy.
Right.
They will blast you with a forehand and make you run all over the court.
Right.
If you put it anywhere near them, they know how to place it somewhere else.
Right. Yeah, and I see that too. I see at the club I play at now. I mean, people are playing into their 80s and they're still enjoying it, and they're 80s. Out there.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and it's great. And I think it's funny you mentioned, like, Andrew, I can't have this segment without bringing up tennis, which is perfect, and it's so true, is I'll go years without seeing someone, and then one of the first questions I get asked upon catching up in small talk is, "Hey, you still playing tennis?" It's like, yeah, I'm still playing.
Yeah.
Which is cool. I have that connection.
It's great. It's a reasonable question, though. There's a lot of associations we have with people, and then they drop off in what you associate with them. There's not an actual passion for the thing.
Right. Yeah. So I was lucky. It's a great sport. You know, it can be a lonely sport at times. I feel like there's a lot of pressure. You can't rely on a teammate to pick you up. You know, if you lose a match, it's
on you.
Your fault.
Yeah.
You know, it's no one else's fault.
Unless you play doubles, then you blame your partner.
Yeah. But it does, I mean, there's just a lot of parallels to, you know, and you and I have talked about this before. It's just kind of even in the business world or just in general, taking some of that responsibility and like having to be disciplined, right? And the accountability aspect. Like you could take a lot of these skills that I think I learned through the sport of tennis and apply them to my work, to your family life.
You lose that in team sports a little bit because you can diffuse the responsibility.
Right.
But tennis, it's on you. And so you learn how to really take it on.
Right.
Is that ever problematic for you? Do you ever find that like you take on too much responsibility in your life?
That's a good question. Now that you're asking it, maybe. I'm not even sure if I've ever thought about it.
Never thought about it that way. You never
but
thought
maybe.
You ever thought like, you know, something's not like thought through it. It's like, well, this actually wasn't my fault, but I feel guilty about something which maybe I shouldn't. Has that ever happened?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm fishing. I'm a psychologist.
Yeah, you're fishing. Yeah, you're a psychologist, right? I think so.
Yeah.
I think it has, and I think part of that could be a little bit, you know, of those parallels. But no, I mean, obviously, I think the pros outweigh those cons significantly.
Yeah.
But I think there definitely is a little bit of that, for sure.
No, I admire it. And I want to talk about your professional career in a little bit because I want to talk about how the psychology transfers across. But I still want to stick with tennis for a moment because, I mean, you're a former tennis pro.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you really took it far. I mean, through college, after college, and I have so many questions about that because you see it from the outside looking in, but I'm interested in what it was like for you going through it. And I guess the first question I would ask is, what were some of the, like, I want to talk about like the moments you had during the experience. Have you had, like, what was your best moment ever playing collegiate or professional tennis or high school tennis? Like looking back on that, what will you always remember as the pinnacle of experiences that felt the best?
Right. Oh man, there's a lot of good memories out there. You know, in tennis players, it is interesting, and you kind of talk to other tennis players, and the memories are there from all the highs and all the lows, like because you're out there on your own, right? So you kind of remember these things, and they're embedded. And you know, probably a couple. Geez, hard to pick one. I do think, you know, going back now to my youth, to juniors, you know, being able to capture the state open for my senior year for Connecticut, winning the entire, you know, the Class M tournament, and then funneling into the actual championship tournament, which was the winners of all the classes.
How old were you?
18. Yeah. So,
did you have delusions of grandeur? Were you like, I will take on Federer? Did you have a sense of how good you were at 18?
No. Yeah. Well, I actually knew, like, because I played national tournaments. I actually played in a couple international tournaments in my teenage years. So I knew where I stacked up. Actually, at that same exact year, when I was a senior at high school, I was ranked. I was in the top 100 at one point, but the year end ended just outside of the top 100 in the country. And that year, interestingly enough, Andy Roddick was ranked number 1 in the country. And I was, you know, because he was the same age. And he obviously went on to win a U.S. Open and, you know, played Federer in multiple Wimbledon finals. So, but I've played tournaments where I didn't play against Andy, but I was there and I was competing in the same tournament. So I could see the level of, like, who's the top
what was it like to see him?
Country.
Was he, like, on the level at the time?
Yeah, huge serve. There's definitely another level there, but it's weird. Once you get to like a high level and you're out there and you're playing, the sport becomes so much more mental.
It's splitting hairs, like who's better than who.
Which you would love this aspect of it when you really kind of deep dive and analyze. It's like, okay, for the most part, if you're top, like if I'm the top player in Connecticut or if I'm winning tournaments, like you have to be fit. True. You have to be able to hit your ground. You have to be able to hit every shot. So it's not like the differences aren't necessarily so much on a physical standpoint.
Everyone's fit.
Everyone's fit. Everyone can hit the shots. You know, like that is out there. And this goes for the pro level too. It's the mental part of the game.
I love this.
Because it's, and people always say, and who's going to come up with these ratios or percentages? But
90% of sports.
People, 80% of tennis is mental. The 20% is physical. I don't know where it really shakes out, but I do agree with the fact that when you get to a very high level, the mental outweighs the physical significantly.
What are the pitfalls mentally?
You know, if you're doubting yourself, right? So the mental ability to be confident, go for the right shots. You know what I'm saying? Like those moments, if you're playing in a finals of a tournament, it's a really close match, to be able to like rise to the occasion, to outbeat the nerves. You know, there's a whole stress factor there.
Okay, so stress reduction, that's one.
Stress reduction for sure.
What about like, is there a pressure to be perfect?
Yeah.
To not make a mistake on the court?
Yeah.
And I imagine adjusting.
Yep.
Like if I make a mistake, how do I emotionally recover?
Right.
Do I spiral? Or do I see that as, can I move on? Can I be present in the moment?
Right.
That's probably huge, right? Being present in the moment.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Or adapting your game against the opponent you're playing that day, because I might have played someone in the round before who had a totally different style game that I had to play a certain way.
Yeah.
But now I play Bryan, and Bryan's game is different.
Yes.
So what are Bryan's weaknesses? How do I attack your weakness?
There are many. There are many weaknesses in my tennis game.
But it is different, and the mental, usually the 5-10 minutes that you have warming up against an opponent are critical, because you're trying to figure out like what am I going to attack here? Can you pick
stuff up on that during that?
You have to.
During the warm up.
Yeah, during the warm up, you figure out.
Like what? Can you give me an example?
Yeah, I mean, if I could figure out that you're not comfortable at the net, your volleys
based on what, like their posture.
Well, when you're warming up, first you're hitting ground strokes. That you're hitting every shot. They give each person gets a chance to volley, hit overheads, hitting serves.
But aren't you going like at like 50%? Like you're not really.
It's kind of warming in, you're easing into it, but I could pick up on like your technique, or I could see like, oh man, like your backhand is much weaker than your forehand. So maybe when we get into baseline rallies, I'm going to hit to the backhand. Yeah, there's a lot of that.
And then where did you learn that? Are you coached to think that way?
Yeah, coaches for sure.
Like to analyze your opponent during warm-ups?
Figure out like what strategy are you going to go into.
Yeah.
Then once you get into these tournaments, and it's like the top. So I'm winning that state tournament, which I had said is probably that's one of my best moments, and my family and my friends were all there. So that's what makes it like such a special moment,
Of course.
But when like even playing New England tournaments, and I'm top 10 in New England, and a lot of times you're playing against the same, like when you get to the semis or the finals, you're playing against the same people.
Yeah.
So I would have already known. It's like I played Bryan 3 months ago.
Yeah.
And this is what worked. This is what didn't work. Like
sometimes people get better though.
Yeah.
And they surprise you.
True. Or maybe you had a bad day.
Yeah, right.
Right. Or
they
like
had
that.
a bad day. And you're overconfident.
Right.
Does that happen too?
Yeah, that can happen too.
Wow.
I know.
That's
why the mental piece is like really critical. And I think that, when you go out there, it's like, it's this battle. I mean, you're battling yourself because you're trying to compete at a high level.
I love this. In another life, I would have been a sports psychologist. I love this conversation.
I knew you would, because it is very analytical, and there's so much you can uncover.
Yes.
Yeah, it's key.
About yourself.
Yeah.
And about other people.
Right.
Anything else you can think of in terms of like the psychological dimension to playing, like while you're playing? Fatigue, how you feel when you're tired, I guess pushing through, fortitude.
Yeah, I think kind of like just the ability to just, in a way, sometimes tennis becomes this, I mean, it's a battle of attrition, but you're just trying to outwill your opponent, and I've had a lot of matches where it's like, you could be playing for hours.
Like which one of you will give up first?
Yeah.
We'll give into the fatigue.
We'll give into the fatigue. We'll crack. Who's basically, who, I don't want to say who wants it more, but in a way, like, who wants it more?
Who wants it more?
Yeah.
No, I think that's a real thing.
Yeah, right?
Right. And to me, now I can get like real weird here for a moment, but
I like it.
What is the it that...
The weirder the better.
What is the it that someone wants? And why do they want it more than the other person? That's when it gets weird. So it is defeating someone, being better than someone.
Right.
And then you can get into,
why is that so important?
Why, like what does it mean?
Right.
If you're not better, are you less of a person?
I know.
Are you not lovable?
Right.
I think there's something wonderful about competition.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a real danger psychologically when you put yourself above someone else in a way that puts them down, right? When it becomes like, I will step on you to be better and feel better about me.
Right.
I mean, I think there's so many, that's a cheater, right? I'll do anything
to win,
right?
Yeah.
You think of Michael Jordan, maniacal about winning.
Yeah.
Probably at the expense of his own psychology. It's not healthy to be Michael Jordan.
No.
Even though we'll remember him as the best ever, the question is at what cost?
Right? And imagine being his teammate.
Oh yeah. Well, he was not a great teammate.
No.
You hear that over and over again. But I guess my question is, there needs to be a space though where we want to do our best.
Right.
And we want someone else to do their best. And at the end, there happens to be a score.
And a winner and a loser.
A winner and a loser. But in terms of the way we approach it, I really want them to do their best, and I will their good. That's the healthiest psychological approach.
Right.
But I imagine it's really about there's either, I don't know about you, but I'm sure you've at least encountered some people where it's about stepping on someone, stepping on their neck to be better than them. Because if they don't, then what?
Right. I know it's a weird thing, and I, thankfully, although my wife Lauren might disagree with this, but I think I'm a much better loser now than I was at my younger age. But I just hated losing. I mean, I just hated it. And so, but then like, this is to your point about uncovering this, it's like why, Andrew, why were you so upset when you lost? You work hard at something, you love it. I'm passionate about the sport. I want to take it as far as I can go. Yeah. And by winning,
there's validation of that.
Validation of that.
Yes.
Right. And if you go out there,
so it would invalidate all the work you put in if you lose.
Yeah, or maybe just kind of question like, well, why, what am I spending all these hours on the court? Or
I've suffered so much to get here. Now that suffering becomes meaningless.
All the sweat, all the hours, I mean, even like money spent, geez, like my mom is spending money on coaches to help me get better. And then like all of a sudden, if you can't perform, you feel like, was it worth it or something? I don't know.
That's a lot of pressure on a young kid though.
It is. Yeah. And I think that's actually why I think a lot of players get burnt out.
I'm thinking too, there's a lot of people who perform at the highest level in whatever their profession is.
Right.
And oftentimes they don't want their kids
to do that
because
they've been through it.
They've been through it. Let me ask you, would you want your daughters to have that level of pressure? Would you want them worrying about the money you spent on them?
I know, no.
To tell me, like, have you thought about their relationship to tennis?
I have, and I think I'd love for them to play. Lauren was a great gymnast in her own right, and they're both into gymnastics now, so it's cool to see them, getting better at that sport that Lauren is passionate about.
Yeah.
I wasn't, but going back to what we talked about earlier, is like there was an immense pressure, obviously, and I felt like I really needed to perform, but my family was not pushing it on me. I wasn't in a situation where I was being forced to play.
Yeah.
So for me, although there was a lot of pressure on it, and I took tennis to again, high school, winning a state championship, playing Division I, and then playing some professional tennis afterwards, I did take it very far. But I don't know, like, for example, if I told my grandfather or my mom, hey, I'm not sure if I'm going to play tennis in college or, something like that. I'm sure there would be some disappointment, but also like, I don't think it would be a situation where they'd be like, hey, we disown you from the family or something like this, Yeah, I don't know. Like, listen, I would love for them to play tennis, and I think that I could obviously provide great value on that front. I know the game very well.
Yeah.
I still play a lot. Mm-hmm. For me, it would be really fun, right? Selfishly, it would be fun for me to watch them play and play with them, enter some father-daughter tournaments, like stuff like that. I've thought about that a lot. But
father-daughter tournaments.
Yeah.
That's great.
But if they
will crush.
We must win. No. But if they go a different direction, that's fine. But I don't know, like, to I guess going back to your actual question about like the pressure and stuff, I hope that I wouldn't be a father that would, make my kids feel like dad's kind of pressuring me to like perform.
I don't think you would be, but something you said interested me when you were talking about why it was so important to win. You said, my mom's spending all this money.
I know.
So it wasn't that she put it on you, you put it on yourself. So knowing...
and my mom never complained about it, by the way. This is me knowing.
Right. So I wonder, I guess that's what I'm wondering if you'd want to shield your kids from, is whether they would put the pressure on themselves.
I know. It could happen.
Or you could talk them through it.
Talk them through it. I'll have you talk them through it.
I'd be happy to.
There's an academy, and it's still there, and it had some of the really good players, James Blake, Marty Fish, some of these guys that were, top in the game or getting to be top in the game at that point.
Yeah.
And they were at Saddlebrook down in Tampa, and I moved to Florida after college to try to take on this dream of mine to be a professional tennis player. And, it was, kind of fizzling out. I could tell, like, listen, it's like, there's an inflection point where it's like, how much longer, it's nearly impossissible. It's like 150 players in the world can actually make a living being tennis players.
Right.
Think about the hundreds of thousands of players.
Yeah, 0.001% of people in the world.
Yeah. So about that whole thing, and the reason I thought of it, as you just mentioned, the money piece, is I kind of like made the decision of, all right, well, I like finance, then maybe this is a good potential segue, but I was like, I know that I like business. tennis is great. I could still keep playing, but I think maybe I hang the rackets up and kind of, I gave it a shot. I'm down in Florida. I kind of remember talking to my mom about this. And I did spend a couple weeks at this academy, Saddlebrook, because another one of my friends was there. And she said to me, this is to my whole point about her not bringing up the money thing, but me putting it on myself, was like, Andrew, if you really, I'll pay for you to do a year at Saddlebrook if you really think you want to continue to pursue it. It's like $50,000 a year. It was like a college. It was like $50,000 a year at the time.
Right.
But you're on there, you're getting instruction, you got the courts, the weight room, the physios, the mental psychologists.
And what year was this?
This is in 2006.
I think $50,000 in 2006 is different than 2023 too.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It was a lot of money. And I just said, Mom, like, that's amazing. I appreciate it. My mom, I grew up blue collar. My mom's a school teacher.
Sure.
And I just was like, no, I can't have you
Loved her baby boy so much.
do that. But she was offered.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome.
So the money thing was more, I guess, in my own head. I was thinking, geez, like putting that pressure on myself, I think.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, let's take the segue. Let's ride it.
Yeah.
Blue collar background.
Yeah.
You're not in construction now. You are like you work in high finance. You work in wealth management. Wealth management.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier that some of your psychological experiences when you're playing tennis have likely transferred over to your professional career now. In what ways?
I think so. I think that there's a lot of things that have transitioned nicely. I think, my job is great and I love it. And it's high stress, it's pressure, but there's a lot of relationship building, the families I work with, right? So just as background.
Well, let's just say, like what you
investing.
Do. You invest. You help invest
I'm
people's
helping
money
families
and
invest.
Hopefully you make more money for people.
High net worth families, individual investors. I do work with the segment of my book of business is with nonprofit clients. So I manage the endowments, which is a really fun component. So it's actually a lot of local area nonprofits where they've entrusted me to manage the endowment fund, which then helps support their mission. So that's a really cool thing.
You like the missions?
Love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but the missions themselves?
Absolutely. Yeah. Each one of my nonprofit clients, and they're all different. Some of them are education based. A lot of them are kind of these classic kind of do-gooder nonprofits that are trying to solve a certain problem that exists.
Yeah.
So that's very cool. Yeah. So I think that by way of background, my firm, we are an investment consulting firm, and I'm one of the consultants that helps families and nonprofit clients manage their money. Yeah. Help their money grow, hopefully, is the goal.
That's
obviously.
the goal. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think that, that having that level of trust is important, but having that pressure to perform. It's kind of like the tennis. We talked about that as like, okay, like my clients rely on me, like Andrew. And
That's a lot of stress.
I have a team behind me, right? There's folks at the firm. Like, it's not like I'm a sole proprietorship. Like I do have a team behind each relationship, and I've got the folks that do the manager research, and we have our investment committee. So there is kind of the whole suite of services where you don't feel like necessarily it's, just Bryan or just Andrew. But clients, when they have issues or when they're wanting to talk, my clients are going to me. Yeah. And if there's a problem, that becomes my problem. And if things are going really well, then I get credited for that. Yeah. So I think
that sounds a lot like tennis.
Yeah. It does. Yeah. I know. It's really kind of cool. And I didn't, it's almost happenstance. I don't know that as I entered my career in finance that I would have back then as an early, 20-year-old known that what I learned on the tennis court and everything that I did getting to that level of competition and tennis would then help me in my job. But it has. Yeah. A lot.
It's life. We like our early psychological experiences get projected onto whatever comes our way later on.
Right.
So they're transferable psychological realities. Fortitude. What we mentioned before. Fortitude, staying calm under pressure. I mean, you have a career that involves a lot of pressure. There's a lot of responsibility. I would have a lot of sleepless nights if I did what you did. What you do. What else did we say? Pressure.
The accountability.
Flexibility. Mm-hmm. Responsibility. All these things. Like you need that.
Right.
Not just in work. Like in your family.
Yeah.
Raising kids isn't always the most streamlined of experiences. Marriage isn't always.
Right.
Sunshine and rainbows. You got to hang in there. You got to work it through. You got to be flexible.
Totally.
You got to adjust. Two people try to build a shared life together and then raise children. It's work. It's commitment. And I can see how tennis played a major role in that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm very happy about that because I do think that, It is a high stress job, and I oftentimes think about like, wow, these families have entrusted, me.
But are you stressed day to day, or are you
Yes.
chill? You are.
I do, like, yeah, and I hopefully it's not like on my sleeve that I'm wearing it, but
Well,
it's
I don't see
just-
it. That's why I'm asking, because I think you do a really good job of being present and being pretty
Yeah.
jovial.
Thank you. I know.
But you feel the stress?
Yeah, every day there's just a lot. The markets are changing every day. They're dynamic. Every single client has their own unique circumstances and challenges and obstacles they're trying to overcome. So it's just, you're having to every single day. Like when I go to work, it's like having to, solve problems and be a strategic thinker and like, being able to come up with creative solutions. Like there's just a lot of that. But then there's also the stress of like, oh my gosh, like, 2022, for example, was an abysmal year for the markets, not just stock market, but fixed income too.
Yeah. Can you give me an example of a creative solution?
Yeah.
Like what are some of the variables that you would have to come up with something out of nothing
Oh my gosh.
to resolve? Like it's simple, because I'm sure it's very complex, but can you make it intelligible for me, the layman?
Oh my gosh. Situation I'm dealing with right now just happened yesterday with a meeting, and it's a client that's basically looking to downsize, and they're wanting to, sell their home, but they're not able to, they're looking for the right buyer. So they're looking to sell a home, move into a condo. They also have a place in Florida, and we're working on a situation where they have a place that they're looking to purchase. They haven't sold their current primary residence. So kind of just this opportunity for bridge financing and how we can use their equity portfolios collateral to like pull against and use different lending creative solutions to help them say, hey, like, yes, you can buy this next property while you're waiting for this property to sell.
Yeah.
But we don't have to liquidate all your positions in your portfolio. There's different ways that we can tweak things around so that you're not actually like paying taxable gains and doing different things by selling positions. There's stuff like that every day.
Do you have a business card?
Well, you need creative solutions.
I need so many creative solutions in my life. Finance is being one of them. No, that's really cool.
You know where to reach me. You have a better in than most people. A direct text, but a message in there. But
Yeah. No, that's cool.
your job, I mean, I think about this too. You have found a sweet spot with what you do, because I feel like, and you mentioned about, with me and my career and why it fits, but I feel like your role now is something that is not surprising at all. I mean, you've always been like a deep thinker, like ever since we were younger. This is that's what you're doing is perfect, I feel like. And it's just, it's right in your wheelhouse.
I feel like I found my niche. It's an interesting bridge between worlds right now with this show.
Yeah.
Because, when we're hanging out with our social group, when we get the opportunity to, because it's hard to get that time, but I think most of our friends don't really see the side of me that you're even seeing right now. I imagine that this is kind of unique and a little weird for you to see me I'm not in therapist mode fully. I mean, this is not fully me in therapist mode, but I certainly borrow from my clinical skills
Totally.
to interview people.
Oh, yeah.
And ask the right questions and try and get something interesting to pull out of them. And so it's kind of strange for even to just put this on video, to have other people that know me in a different capacity, to see different parts of me here, like conducting an interview and engaging with people in this level.
Well, there's a skill there too, and I feel like you have the ability to take a certain theme and really dig into it and go deep with it.
Yes.
I mean, it's one thing asking one question,
Yeah.
but to be able to have multiple follow-ups on that and to be able to continue to like let someone speak and really uncover things,
Yeah.
that's an art form, I think.
Yeah, it takes a lot of time, takes a lot of training. It's also a little weird because there's a camera on right now.
Right.
Like we're both kind of aware that people are watching us. Like if there was a wall
Yep.
and it was just you and I,
Right.
I mean, I would pursue a lot of different questions in a deeper way.
Right.
So it's not exactly clinical work. Interviewing is slightly different than clinical work.
Right.
But certainly that comes up.
Right.
It comes up, and I feel grateful that I have the chance to do something very unique. I think the whole psychology and religion thing is pretty unique in the world today.
Yeah.
It's very niche, but I think people are interested in it if they have the time and space to be interested in it.
Right.
Because
I agree.
everyone's just so busy. It's like, if you're not really devoted to that, then it's easy to, put it pretty low on your priority list,
Right.
because you got to pay bills, you got, just regular life. Yeah. Yeah. And usually in my line of work, you find people in a difficult place.
Yeah.
You know, they're in a place of
they need healing.
They need healing. They're I don't want to use the word casualties, but they're at a place of not knowing what else to do because their regular method of dealing with life has failed.
Yeah.
But you know, the dirty little secret about therapy is that everyone goes.
Right.
No one wants to admit that they go.
Right.
But everybody goes. I mean, in some capacity over the course of your life, whether it's like, I have ADHD or I needed marital work or whatever. Nobody wants to talk about it.
Right.
It's so common, but there's just a stigma. And it's reducing, I think.
I was just about to say, I think that it's reducing quite a bit.
It is. It is. But
more and more people are open about speaking of their therapy or what they do or meeting with a therapist. Like, I think that's fantastic.
Why do you think more people need therapy? Do you think more people need therapy? I mean, you hear about like the mental health crisis.
I know.
My opinion is that it's related to like a breakdown of family. You know, I think that I have a job because I'm replacing what used to be provided for by family life.
Yeah.
In general.
Yeah.
And as families are breaking down, you have a lot of divorce, you have a lot of disconnection. We live in a global society. People are moving to pursue jobs and they don't have their family system around them. And it's like we have this natural need to feel supported.
Totally.
And to ask for help. And that's easier to do within your family. But now that as there's less family, like you need to go somewhere.
Right.
You know?
But I think almost it's like the idea that now that the stigma is being broken down a little bit and people realize that, wow, like there's a lot of people that go to therapy and it's very helpful.
I'm not crazy
if
I go to therapy.
Right? So I feel like part of that, you know, is introduced now, and you almost, you know, working, with a therapist, maybe there's certain things you want to uncover with a therapist that maybe, you know, you wouldn't bring up to your family or friends, you know, like, but you have that safe space. I mean, obviously that's a big part of the gig.
Yes.
And I don't know, like, but you know, you bring up a good point, like why is it now, you know, more popular, or we feel like it's more prevalent? I mean, I even think, again, not to go back to the tennis thing, but like there's so many more tennis players that are outspoken now about working with a sports psychologist and dealing with working with a therapist because of these things we talked about earlier about the pressures and the stress and being able to like just get it all out there, you know, like get it all out. Right. And like, you know, someone like Naomi Osaka, who's, you know, she won, you know, multiple Grand Slams and is like, you know, takes a hiatus from the sport because she feels like, geez, it's just, I'm overwhelmed. This is too much. Yeah. You know, stuff like that. Mental health thing has obviously come out more now. So I wonder, you know, I think there's...
What's your reaction to that? Personally, are you like, come on?
A little bit.
Play tennis.
A little bit, but also
and I would understand
empathetic to it too.
Okay. So you have both parts of yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's a very, I love this conversation, by the way. It's a very interesting topic. Like you hear about some of these players who also, you know, they don't go to the press after their matches. That's too stressful for them or stuff. Like they don't, you know, because they have anxiety over the questions and the reporters. Like,
and you as a fan would just want to know about them too.
So part of me is kind of like, well, you know, part of your job as a professional athlete is to respond to those things and be in the press box and answer questions so that the fan base and
like almost like suck it up
and do it. This is part of like your job. You clearly want to become a professional tennis player.
Right.
You knew that that's part of the gig.
Yep.
So part of me is like, geez, just suck it up. But then there's another part of me that's like, wow, like if someone's really struggling, you know, or like if someone's dealing with deeper issues inside,
definitely.
Like who am I to be like, suck it up,
right?
You know,
yeah, like compassion, mercy, I get it.
Yeah. So it's interesting, but you don't. It's such a weird thing because a generation ago, or even, you know, like 10 years ago, this was not like really a thing. I mean, it's becoming a thing. I'm talking about like this tennis now. Like you didn't. There's a lot of players now.
No one would ever say that. Yeah.
There's a lot of players now that are, again, they're like refusing to go into the press sessions and different stuff, and like. I don't remember. That was never a thing. It was always kind of like, all right, finish your match. You got to go answer questions. Like this is part of it.
It's almost like a second skill set that people had to develop.
Yeah.
Like being in front of a camera.
Right.
You know, and you know, I've heard also that it's interesting with the young athletes today, which was very different than when we were growing up, is that the athletes today are growing up with a camera on them anyway. Cell phones.
Instagram.
All that.
Everything.
So it's it's normal. It's normal for them. For us, it's kind of weird.
Yeah.
You know, even this is kind of weird for me to have cameras on us. But a young, like my son, you know how many videos I have of my son? Like, he doesn't care. Like, I imagine when he's our age, if he'll care at all that a camera's on, or he'll even notice it.
I know.
Like, probably not.
I know, probably not.
Probably not. So the comfort level, I think, changes by generation.
Yeah.
But,
My
yeah.
girls are so cute. Like, Lauren will be like, or I, for that matter, will be like, I, want to take a pic. They've got their, like, the pose, like, they could be in the middle of something, opening a gift or something.
Yeah.
And we want to take a picture. And it is like, change, like, pose, snap, done. All right, go back to my activity. But it is like,
they're trained.
They're trained.
Yes.
Camera's coming out.
I know. But in some ways, to me, though, that's not the healthiest.
Yeah.
I remember this. I remember being struck by social media and the fake persona that people put out there was evidenced by a moment I was watching a couple teenage girls, and they were having like a selfie. It's not a selfie if it's a couple. Is it a groupie? Whatever it is.
Yeah.
So they all got this picture like this, and they were all like this. Like they were the happiest people in the world.
Right.
And they took the picture, and like literally within moments, they go like this afterwards. It's like, are you really putting your true self out there to the world in social media?
Right.
You can't. And even like this show, I mean, I'm not that far into it. I'm not that far into recording this, but I know that the longer it goes, the more authentic I want to be. I want to increase my comfort level.
Yes.
That I'm not trying to put on a persona for anyone watching this. Because the other thing is, I don't think people are really interested in it.
I get it.
Like the best podcasts out there, the best Instagram, TikToks, or whatever, is someone that's not producing it.
Right.
It's like, just hit record. Like, I've
I've
had a bad day.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree.
And you and I, we're cutting this, right? We're editing this,
right?
And we were talking about how this is our second take, and how this take, when we were trying to recreate the first interview, it didn't feel natural.
Yeah, it's true.
But now, as the interview is going on, the questions are going on, and we're exploring new topics, it just feels better.
There's a flow.
Yeah, there's a flow. People are going to be more interested in this. If we're trying to recreate the first interview, it's not going to work.
It's too rehearsed or something.
Yeah, rehearsed, or it's acting.
Yeah. No, I agree.
So,
totally agree.
I think people are. I mean, you remember this obsession that people used to have with reality TV,
right?
Which we later discovered that it wasn't real either, because that was edited.
right.
But at least, like, from a viewer perspective, nobody wants manicured personas.
Right.
They want the real you, because one of the most interesting thing is everybody's scared to be vulnerable. Mm-hmm. And men don't even like the word vulnerable anyway.
Right.
Authentic sounds a lot better. Right?
Right.
Like, nobody wants to be really authentic in this world.
Right.
But whenever you see someone else being authentic, inside you're like, wow.
Yeah.
I'm impressed. Like,
yes.
That's courageous.
Yes.
I appreciate that.
I appreciate that.
But still, we have that block.
I wish I could do that.
I wish I could do that. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's so interesting. We don't want to show ourselves, but when someone else does, we approve of it.
Yeah.
Almost, I mean, there's people that, it's like the Batman, I think of the Batman film, and Alfred, some people want to watch the world burn. Like, there are people who are haters. Haters exist.
Haters exist.
By and large, people who are generally healthy are appreciative of vulnerability.
I totally agree.
And that's what I want to create with the show, but I have to model it. And I have to be me more and more and more and more.
Right.
So it's something I'm working on.
I love that.
One day at a time.
We all have things we have to work on. Right?
Definitely. There's no perfection out there.
Yeah.
We can strive for it, but we have to be, it's just like tennis. I want to pursue the perfect game of tennis. But how do I respond to those moments when it's not a perfect game of tennis?
Right.
Yo-Yo Ma, you know who he is? The cellist?
Yep.
I heard him once talk about how at one point he thought he could give the perfect concert. And he tried. Like 10 times. He tried to give a perfect concert. And then he realized that there's no such thing.
Yeah.
And actually the perfect concert is the beauty of him even making a mistake.
Yeah. Right.
And working with it and adjusting with it and accepting the moment of where he is. That's what perfection is. It's not hitting every note perfectly. Yeah. There's no such thing as perfection that we achieve. And no one will love us more if we are perfect.
It's almost like having that moment of realization that perfection doesn't exist is such an uplifting moment and such a great thing to just realize, So there's
yes.
key.
And we think about those people that we love, and we love them in their imperfections.
Right.
We don't actually.
Right. Yeah.
Like, think about our kids.
Yeah.
You know, like if they screw up, we don't love them less.
Right.
You can't earn love. We don't love them less if they screw up. We want them to do well.
Right.
So we try and guide them into excellence.
Right.
But like, if they're upset because they made a mistake, I'm upset because they're upset, not because my love depends on them being perfect.
Right.
And I think we can all think in those terms if we for a moment reflect on those people that we love. It actually doesn't matter whether or not they're perfect. We love them anyway.
Right.
So why wouldn't we expect the same?
Right.
So I also want to talk to you. So you know what I do for a living.
Yeah.
It's a major focus of my professional work to integrate psychology and spirituality. And I mean, spirituality is a pretty broad term. I mean, that could include religion,
Yep.
which is like a outward liturgical expression of norms.
Yep.
A lot of people today say things like, I'm spiritual but not religious. They make that distinction. I believe in God, but I don't practice, or I believe in something transcendent. You know, when I think of spirituality, by that I mean the relationship with God, with a personal God. But it doesn't have to be. I mean, spirituality encompasses many things. It could include philosophy.
Yep.
You know, I mean, there's like Buddhism is essentially a philosophy, but just your understanding of what the human person is.
Yeah.
And then what, you know, the science of psychology. And they are, in my opinion, deeply related and affect one another.
Right.
Coming into this conversation,
Yeah.
you expressed a little bit of reservation about this topic.
Yeah.
Say more about that. Like what, you didn't really want to get into it. I mean, I think for you, maybe it was closely related to politics.
Yeah.
It's not
maybe.
the same, but they're like, can we talk about religion? Do you want to stay
It is
away?
kind of sometimes similar. We could talk. Oh, we could totally talk about it. But I do think it's funny, like, right? Like you hear these, you know, these cliches out there. Like, what do you know? People don't talk about religion or politics at the dinner table. Like,
Yeah.
comes up. It's like a thing, you know? And it's probably because I think people, you know, when someone has their own views, and if, you know, someone feels strongly one way and there's a counter view, that could, you know, a debate, which I am always for even-keeled debates and someone who's being reasonable, but sometimes those debates can trickle into arguments and, you know, and then it's tougher.
Yeah, I think people make this connection between what I believe and who I am.
Yeah.
So if you disagree with what I believe, you disagree with me as a person.
Right.
That's the common perspective nowadays.
Right.
And so politics and religion, if we disagree, that means you reject me. And so that gets me heated and I push back and I argue with you.
Right. And I would kind of disagree with that, right? Because I just feel like...
Certainly.
And you too. Like, I think you're someone who clearly has exhibited being like very open to, you know, many different people's religions and their views on politics. And so, no, I would be happy to talk about it. I'm Catholic. You know, I grew up in the Catholic Church, Ukrainian Catholic. So...
particular type of Catholic. Particular flavor of Catholic.
Type of flavor of Catholic. I still, you know, I have those virtues and those beliefs. I believe in God, you know, like I have those beliefs.
A personal God. Not just like there's something out there. It's like, no, there's a person, a God who loves you. You believe that?
I don't know that actually. No, I don't think that's how I would say it. I know.
Okay.
I think this is a good conversation to kind of expound on this.
Tease it out.
Tease it out.
Yeah.
No, I think my belief more so is about, and, you know, maybe this is a good opportunity after, you know, doing this with you and taking some more time to reflect on it, is like to really hash out like how I feel and my beliefs. I feel like some of those, even as an adult, a grown male adult, like I might not still have all that sorted out.
Sure.
I believe in, it's kind of like what you said a moment ago. It's like, I do have strong beliefs in something that is
something more
than great. It's
transcendent.
Greater than us, something that is out there. I do feel strongly that, you know, I pray every night. I get on my knees, like I pray.
To who?
So I pray to God, but I don't specifically saying, like, prefacing it, this is like I'm praying to my own personal God. I'm sending a prayer out to,
like, the universe.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Who's listening?
That's a great question. I know. You know, and I haven't thought about it in that type of detailed way, and I should, quite frankly. I think I am someone who, I'm spiritual in nature. Mm-hmm. I think being religious, or I think having these types of beliefs, I think it's important. I feel like it's healthy.
Something transcendent, something beyond this, which guides me.
Yeah, it helps guide you, and I think that I grew up that way, obviously in the Catholic Church, and you're believing, in these things, but ultimately just even, as an adult,
Did you once believe in a personal God who loves you? Or was that were you never really sure about that?
I never really was sure about that. Like an actual personal, a personal God for me.
Like monotheism.
Yeah. Yeah. Is that what you believe, or?
Yeah. No, I'm Catholic.
Yeah, I know, but like personal God that's just specific to you.
What do you mean by specific?
Well,
I mean, I'm Catholic, so I believe in the Trinity of three persons, which is a mystery.
Yep.
The Son of God, who is God, came into this world 2,000 years ago and died for my sins.
Yes.
And he loves me. And because of this, I was invited into this Trinitarian love of the Father. And, this is all mystery, so I don't even know what I'm talking about. But like the Holy Spirit.
You do.
I mean, kind of, but still, it's a mystery still. Like the Holy Spirit empowers me to say yes to this and participate in the divine life. And I believe God who loves me. And when you say like specific to me, I believe that Christ would have died just for me. Mm-hmm. He died for everyone, but he would have done it just for me. And he hears me specifically. When I pray, he hears me.
Right.
And his Spirit, the Holy Spirit, is within me.
Yes.
And this whole life is about me returning to God the Father. So that's very specific and articulated.
Yes. Yes.
So I do believe in, a monotheistic personal God, which is, there's three major religions that hold this view. It's Judaism, Christianity, and Islam and Muslims.
Right.
As distinct from more Eastern faiths.
Yep.
Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism, those kinds of faiths that are more like they've taken a more pantheistic type of approach, and kind of it's been absorbed into this syncretic all one,
right,
or in some cases like all nothingness.
Yes.
Like it's all one thing.
Right.
That's Eastern faith. Nowadays, like these things are all blending, so you can't even say that it's Eastern and Western. There's a lot of Eastern belief in the United States.
Right.
And there's Western thought. Western monotheism has made its way into the global East. But traditionally, that's where those religions gained popularity. Right. Yes, I believe in a personal God who loves me.
Right, right. I think, it's so interesting. I feel like, it's a topic that is very mysterious. There's so many unknowns.
Sure.
Right? And there's a lot of questions, and people have a lot of questions around this, So I think like my faith is something, like having faith is important to me, and having spirituality and something that's greater than me, those types of things. But but so in general though, like
when you heard me talk about like me articulate my faith, were you like, he's crazy?
No.
Okay. What was your interior response to me sharing what I believe, which is very specific? Yes.
No, I enjoyed listening to it. And to me that felt like you have perspective and you have conviction in your thoughts and your beliefs, and so no, I didn't think that was crazy at all.
What's interesting is I like what I just said to you and articulated it in that way.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever said it in those terms to anyone in our friend group and in our social strata at all. There's no space to talk about faith anymore.
Right.
Like no one's going to ask me.
Right.
But two, when is there going to be a circumstance that comes up where I'm like, this is what I believe?
Right. I know.
It's like a private thing that no one really knows that Bryan would talk about.
But why should it be that way?
I don't know. That's why I'm doing the show. I think it's ridiculous. I don't think we should be fighting over this, because I also believe from a Catholic perspective that faith is a gift.
Right.
And there's a mystery involved with, even like, I believe in God. I believe in a personal God. But I don't know why, even in my belief system, why God gives the gift of faith to certain people at certain times in their life.
Right.
And not other people at different times in their life. And the mystery of, God calling to people and whether or not they can hear him and whether or not they're saying yes to that call. I don't know. The answer is I don't know. So I'm certainly not judging anybody for not believing what I believe. So I'm happy to have a conversation about it.
Right.
I'm very interested in listening to people articulate where they're at.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's true. It's like, for me, I think some of those very specific beliefs that you described are ones that I think I probably still like have trouble with to try to like, for myself to try to like fully have conviction. Does that make sense or no?
Of course.
And there's a lot of people that are in that camp, I would imagine.
Why? Do you know why? Have you thought of, you probably haven't thought of, but I'm asking you now.
Yeah.
If you take a moment to think about why that there's like an obstacle to believing that a personal God loves Andrew.
Right. Yeah. What is the obstacle? Is it just a matter of like not having this conviction or proof, or not being able to like point to a certain thing that you could then kind of justify reason?
Have you had spiritual experiences in your life, like emotional experiences where you're like, wow, this is not all there is. There's something beyond this, like that emotionally resonated with you? Not just conceptually, but emotionally.
Right.
A lot of times people find that kind of thing in nature.
Right.
It's like, wow, the grandeur of this mountain.
No. I know what you're saying. I think, it's more so, I guess it comes in moments of life with, when there's grief, or there's, like, I feel like sometimes you could feel that emotion, and you can feel like, okay, like,
it doesn't make sense that this is the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just had that.
Like how could my love of my grandfather be limited to space and time?
Right.
No way. This is way bigger than that.
It's way bigger than that. Yeah, exactly. So like there's that type of thing. I think I don't know, like we just had like Lauren's father pass away in June, my
Your
father-in-law
wife.
that I was really, really, really close with him. And I felt during that stretch of time, I found myself like praying more often and kind of like seeking guidance and kind of just having this emotional connection to something that was bigger than me.
Yeah.
Right. And having like, and needing that, but then also feeling in a weird way, like feeling the love coming back and like the comforting nature.
Absolutely.
Do you know what I mean? Like it wasn't like, I don't even know like what I was really asking for, except for just like, I need help. This is a tough time for, for me, for my wife, for my kids. They love their grandfather. So it's just like,
hard for the kids.
They're at that age. It's like, they're not old enough where they can fully understand like all these things, right? Like it's just,
where is he?
Where is he and why is he not here? Why can I not see him anymore? But they're not young enough where we can just all of a sudden like sweep it under the rug. It's not like it's a baby that's not going to remember this person. Like they have distinct memories with their papa, like, so like, Rosie, for example, like heartbreaker. I remember when we had to, my wife and I had to like sit them on a couch and we had to like let them know that what had happened, that, Papa has passed on, and we're saying he's gone to heaven, and, you won't be able to see him anymore, but he's still here with us, like those types of things.
Gosh, just right now, listen,
dude, it was so
hard. Crushing.
And she had such an incredible child response to something that like, right, like you think about it and you're like, oh, like this is perfect that you're asking this question. I don't have a good answer for you, but man, it's so cool to hear how little kids think and how their brains react. But she was just like, Dad, I don't understand. Like, are there no phones in heaven? Like, why can't we just call him? Right? And it's like, of course, like a little 6-year-old is or she was 5 at the time, but it's like, of course, like, why would there not be phones there?
Like heaven is a concrete place where they should have cell phones.
Yeah, they should have
cell phone towers. Yeah. Oh.
And so like that thing, like I remember thinking she is so sweet, and she's obviously processing this and trying to think and ask questions and articulate, but like I don't have a good answer for that.
Yeah.
There's no cell phones there.
No, there's no cell phones there. There's no cell phone towers there. But did you share with her the view that you will see him again?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And
so that's not. So it's interesting hearing just like holding up a mirror, like
I know
to what you're saying. So it's like I don't believe in a personal God. So it's more like Eastern, which is like this transcendent oneness of all of us being connected. But the belief that I will see him again
is
it reflects personhood within transcendent, whether maybe not personal God, but
Yeah.
I will still be me when I get there.
Yeah.
And your grandpa will still be him when he gets there. So personhood exists in the transcendent realm.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's confusion here with Salak.
Well, I mean, it's probably just stuff to sort out and think through. That's all. You know?
Yeah. But that was helpful. Like, I think that, I don't know. I can actually see both sides of it, but I do think that during that stretch of time with, my father-in-law passing away, which was a really tough time for our family a few months ago, and Lauren and him had, that was a very classic daddy-daughter relationship. I mean, she's still to this day. I mean, this happened months ago, and, I still catch her kind of crying and having moments of grief.
I mean, such a good relationship probably, I mean, I'm not going to say probably, I know this for a fact, that such a good relationship between a father and daughter opened her up to a healthy marriage.
I hope so.
It opened her up to a healthy marriage. I mean, like that father-daughter dynamic is so important, and in terms of the type of man that she chooses. And so, I mean, he was a good man. You're a good man. So there's a lot of gratitude to be extended his way.
Totally. Oh my gosh, I know that. I appreciate that. No, it makes me feel good, and I do think that, and Lauren will say this too, like we were similar, and we are, we're similar in very many ways,
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
He was someone who, open house, open heart, loved everyone. He was just also someone who enjoyed being out. Like I love being out and talking to people and entertaining, and that was how he was. And strong family man too. Like I respect so many things about you. It was amazing for me to have that time with him, and I truly viewed him as
those family values. If you have family values, you don't want someone that doesn't.
Exactly.
It's because it just becomes the most important thing.
Yeah. So no, I'm happy we talked about that. It makes me feel good, and to be honest, that's just getting these types of things out, and I found myself almost like wanting to cry just now, like thinking about losing him, and it's like, but then you kind of feel like, this whole idea of like he's in a better place. Like I truly do believe that. So that, again, speaks to my religiousness, right? And how I feel.
Yeah.
And I truly do believe that, and I feel that way. So there's the anger and the frustration and the grief and the sorrow when you lose someone important to you.
Yes.
But then there's also the other side of it that you feel like, okay, he's not in pain anymore. Like he had been suffering a little bit. And
how long has it been since he passed?
He just passed in June.
In June. I think
6 months.
I think I remember saying this to you after your grandfather died, who was very much a father figure for you. It's so funny. The memory is a funny thing. I remember saying this to you then, and I think it applies now. I think one of the hardest parts of grief, of losing someone, is not quite when they die, because that's when everybody's around and trying to console you. It's 6 months later where it still hurts.
Yeah.
And no one's asking anymore.
Right.
But you're still in pain.
Yeah. That's how we feel. I mean, that's how it is. And I think that, Lauren comes from a family that's a strong, pretty large family. So there's a good system of support there, right? So I think, and, we've been trying everything we can to, close with, we've been very close with Lauren's mom, with Sharon, and we continue to be that way. And she's a strong lady, and I give her so much credit because now she's alone. I mean, they're married for almost 50 years. They would have in 2024, there would have been their 50th wedding anniversary. So can you imagine, like
50 years of a spouse
being with someone for almost 50 years?
Well, you hear about when one spouse dies, the other one dies within like a year or two, because so much of your psychology is bound up in that dynamic.
Exactly.
It's like, what am I going to do now? Like now I'm just waiting to die so I can be with my beloved again. Very common, like even if unconsciously. With people.
Yeah. So it is. You're right. It's like, it's not that first week or two afterwards, you're kind of caught up in the rush of like, okay, you're seeing a lot of family, you're with people, and there's that. But then it's like, we're pretty much at that 6 month mark now, and it's still very raw and emotional, and it's tough, and we're coming up against the holiday season now, so I kind of just feel like he was the guy that would cook all the meals and do all the stuff. And
you gonna be that guy?
I try to help out. I would love to. I think that,
what's stopping you from like, all right, there's a vacuum here, there's a gap here, someone's got to be the new Paterfamilia.
Yeah. Nothing really. I think, but what we want to do too is like, and Lauren's brother Nick is great, and like her mom also too. So I just feel like we're going to step up and it'll be totally fine. I mean, Lauren's a great cook and we all, nothing's preventing that.
She make a nice pierogi though? No. Well, she's not native Ukrainian. So it's okay.
Yeah. We'll get there.
We'll get there. We'll do language classes for the kids.
Yeah, and then
pierogi classes.
Yeah, right. No, but I think this holiday season, if we're getting obviously like very real with, family and spirituality and, religion, but then also just like the whole psychology of how do you move on from losing someone like that? Like there's
the final stage of acceptance.
There's steps to that,
Yeah. I mean, even, the classic DABDA, they call it: denial, anger, bargain, depression, and then the final stage being acceptance. And the acceptance that someone is gone. I heard someone, I'll never forget that they said this. It was a person that we know, and his mother died, and I hadn't seen him in a couple years. I saw him after a few years, and his mother had died. And I was, you're just talking to people, catching up. How's your mom? And he's like, oh, she died. She died a couple years. We lost mom a couple years back. And I said, Dave, I'm so sorry. That's awful. And he goes, thanks. It's part of life. That's just such a simple phrase that, I haven't lost my parents yet.
Yeah.
And I will never forget that phrase, that's the end goal for me in relation to someone I love dying, is to accept it's part of life. And you go through the emotions, you go through the pain,
right?
But to accept that this happens to everyone,
right?
And I have to come on board with the reality of what it is,
right?
And it doesn't need to be a constant source of distress. You never get over it. You never get over someone dying.
No.
Ever.
No.
The people that have died in my life, you still feel tethered to them.
Yeah.
I heard a priest say one time, it was one of the best homilies I've ever heard at a funeral. He said, the fact that it hurts is good.
Yeah.
That's you being tethered to them through the doors of death. That's the line. It should hurt. That's the love. It should hurt. And I was like, that's a really consoling way to think about it. It is,
actually.
Yeah. So.
I don't know. My grandfather, I will tell you now, I literally think about this guy every day.
Every day.
Every day.
That's so cool.
And it's 2008, so we're 15 years, almost. It was December 2008, so it'll be 15 years next month. And it still hurts.
Yeah. It'll always hurt. It should never not hurt.
Right.
It's invalidating for someone to say you should, move on.
Yeah.
You don't move on.
Right.
Because love is eternal.
Love is eternal. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Bronx Tale.
A Bronx Tale. I'm elated that you chose this film. And
how many you saw it before, obviously?
I've seen it before. I absolutely love this film. I don't talk about it very much. When someone asks you what are your favorite, 5 films, it doesn't make that in my mind, in my consciousness, but I've always been very impacted by this film. It's had a special place in my heart. And when we get there in the conversation, I will talk to you about how I actually use this in psychotherapy.
No way.
A scene from this film.
No
way. So it's really in my consciousness.
Okay, cool.
So when you said A Bronx Tale, I was like, that's great.
Oh my God, I know. Your response on text was great. And I'm like, I guess he likes this choice.
I love it. I love it. I'm open to new movies, but I also it's one of those films I haven't seen too much where I could quote it. Yes. But I've seen it and it was familiar, but it was great.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I think, first of all, it's just a cool place to be. It's a cool place to exist in.
Yes.
You want to hang out in this movie.
You want to hang out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Bronx.
The Bronx. I think the music.
Oh, music's fantastic.
Yeah. The outdoor setting, everyone's out on the stoop. We don't have that anymore.
No, I know.
You have the hilarious Italian culture with the nicknames.
Yes. Love those nicknames.
Tommy Toupee.
Yep.
Jojo the Whale. I mean, just so funny. You can't help but laugh during those early scenes.
Yeah.
As he's setting the setting. He literally is explicitly setting this is what that time was like.
Yep.
And then even later on in the transition, he's like, the Beatles were showing us a new way to live. The setting is really, really important here.
Totally.
And even the last line of the whole film, This is just another Bronx Tale.
Just another Bronx Tale.
But setting is great.
Yeah.
Full stop.
Yeah. Agreed.
And then when we start to, delve into it, we have like two major themes going on. So there's the one of the question of who's his father. That's the big question. And then the other one is the question of racism.
Yes.
And which in a certain way like comes out of nowhere.
Right.
And it's like, does it even fit in this film with what it's about? I mean, it does because it's such a great film, but it almost feels like it's additive, to the main thrust of the film.
Right.
Anyway, so what are your basic impressions? Like, why did you choose this film?
I know it's so funny that there are those issues are there, and I feel like that the film is amazing.
So good.
I don't even, to be honest with you, it's like when I was thinking, it's one of my favorite movies. So number one, it's like when you asked me to like pick a, have me watch a movie so we could talk about it. Like I love this movie.
Yeah.
I think it's got everything you want in a great film, right? So it's got the humor, like we talk about, like obviously the nicknames and like the characters and some of the humor is there. It's got the love story between C and Jane, which I think is probably a part of the movie that maybe doesn't get talked about enough.
Enough attention.
Some of those scenes and stuff.
Beautiful.
When they're first like getting to know each other, when he's walking her back to her apartment.
His vulnerability.
Oh.
He sets the stage with describing her. She was what do you say? She was tall. She was classy.
Yes.
She was so classy.
She was so classy. Yeah.
And there's one more adjective. I forget what it was. She's tall. She was beautiful, and she was classy. Something like that. And yeah. You experience that with her the whole time. She's a beautiful young woman.
She is. Some of the love scenes are great, and then like that first kiss they had, and then she was like, "That's not a kiss. Like this is a kiss." Like how great is that? Imagine if you're a teenage boy, and a girl saying like, "That's not a kiss. Here's a kiss," and you like, amazing moment.
Well, what's so? And I have so many thoughts. So one of the tensions you find with Elder Calogero is he is both gangster and that sweet little boy.
Yep.
And with her, you see the sweet little boy.
Yep.
You don't see gangster.
Never.
It's actually his true self.
It's his true self. He is his true self with Jane. And interestingly enough, that gangster component, like you end up finding with Sonny, that yes, Sonny's a gangster, but he also is vulnerable. And Sonny
just with C.
With C.
Just with C.
C.
Yeah.
Right? And so he has that aspect.
Yes. And in fact, he tries to curb C back into that part of himself.
Yes.
Very conflicting messages from Sonny.
Totally.
Because this was, I think, Lorenzo, his point was that it's not what you say to my kid. It's what he sees around here.
It's what he sees around here.
And what Sonny would say was actually pretty healthy.
Yeah.
It was pretty healthy for the most part.
Was,
Don't get involved with these kids. Go to college. Get 2 educations.
Yep.
But, be true to yourself and don't screw up your life. This is for me. This life is for me. Don't have this be a life for you.
Yeah. Don't waste your talent.
Yeah. It's a major theme. Wasted talent.
But then what C is seeing is different than what Sonny's telling him.
Right.
Yeah. Part of the reason I picked the film too, and I think you loved this part of it, was that I went to school in the Bronx. I went to Fordham. They have the Bronx and the Manhattan campus, but I was in the Bronx, and
he even says this is Fordham.
Fordham, yeah. So the Fordham neighbor, like that 187, like I lived 2 blocks from there. Like that, those scenes, like that funeral home where they had Sonny's.
You recognize it?
Yeah, all this stuff. Like, so it's just
so cool.
That part of my life is. I mean, I can't even speak enough about my college day. I loved going to Fordham. I loved being in the Bronx. I loved Little Italy. Yeah. Now it just was Was
it the same?
It was. Parts of it were very similar.
Yeah.
Parts of it had obviously evolved and gentrified, and the communities have diversified. So there's a difference there. But I would tell you,
was the stoop culture still real?
Yes, it was. And being in college and seeing the stoop culture. And seeing, this Italian American community and the way that they was so similar to that movie, to like what I experienced personally as a college student. I lived on Arthur Avenue. Like my senior year, my college roommates and I lived on Arthur Avenue, and I bartended at a bar literally on Arthur Avenue, where the owner of the bar was in the mafia. So he was a mobster. And he actually, in fact, in my fall of senior year, and I'd been bartending at this place for no more than a month or 2. he got indicted. He was part of a large group of mobsters that basically got sent to prison.
You were in this movie.
I went to go visit him in federal prison in Pennsylvania. My boss, who is the owner of the bar that I bartended at.
Come on.
He got put in jail for extortion and he got locked up. And I never forget, like before he went to jail, me and one of my other college roommates that were bartenders there, he told us to like take care of the bar, make sure his wife, like make sure she's okay.
Yeah.
And like his wife then kind of was the quasi like owner, boss of the bar, but really he was still calling the shots from jail.
Wow.
So I like lived in this weird like mafioso culture where I had, Violet, you're going to die about this. This is crazy that like you brought up the names, how it's funny in the movie.
Yeah.
We had at my bar, my college bar that I bartended at, before the college kids would come in later at night, you know, post like dinner time and like whatever classes were over, night classes were done at 9:00. College kids would come in and stay, you know, New York bars open until 4. So it was like the late night crowd. But the after work crowd, and I would start bartending a lot of times at 4 or 5 p.m., like depending on if I didn't have classes and stuff, I would take those shifts. We had all the neighborhood Italians were like, because George, my boss, and God rest his soul, he is no longer with us here. He passed away of brain cancer years ago. And Lauren and I actually went to the funeral. Wow. Which was, I mean, it's kind of like what you'd envision in the movies, like all the Italians and everyone's in the church with the sunglasses. And it was at one of these it was at one of the churches, St. Carmel on 187th, where the movie is filmed. And it was like the same type of scene. And even though this is like, you know, many years afterwards. But anyways, we had Tommy Parks, who worked for Parks and Rec's division. All right. So his name, like all the names, the nicknames. It was like the
Tommy
people.
Parks, yeah.
They all had behind the bar. I had a sheet of
nicknames, yeah.
I had a sheet of paper that literally was like, you know, it'd be a Tommy Parks, Joey Prosciutto. So this guy Joey who like was obsessed with prosciutto. So his name
but
was
the
Joey
Italians always shorten it, right?
Yeah, Joey Prosciutto.
Hey, have some rigatto. You want some rigatto? Some prosciutto.
Danny Suits, who like this guy wore a suit every day of his life. So like the Italian names.
It's so great. So funny.
And I had it behind the bar, and it'd be like Tommy Parks, Joey Prosciutto, and they would just have like a running tab. But they had all these stupid nicknames. They were so good.
That's great.
And I lived that, and I'm like, so when I'm watching The Bronx Tale, and I'm hearing like these guys. Who was the guy in the what was his name? Coffee Cake. One of the guys he like had, you know.
Drake's, wasn't it? Like Drake's Coffee Cakes.
Yeah, but then in the movie, like his face, because he had like, you know.
Right, but he said he looked like a Drake's coffee.
Like a Drake's coffee cake.
I think I think it was something Drake, wasn't it?
But I was, you know, of course it's, you know, we say it in jest, but like that type of stuff, I was
my favorite
in a world where I saw that happening.
My favorite was Jojo the Whale. He said, they say you don't walk next to him, you walk among him.
You walk among him.
Such a great line.
Such a good line.
Yeah.
So I love that. So I guess that you asked the question to me about like picking the movie. Number one, it's an awesome film, and we'll get into some of those issues that you mentioned a moment ago. But like also because that particular neighborhood, like I lived in that neighborhood. Now this is like I lived in the neighborhood like, you know, 40 years after or 30 years after the movie was filmed, but like I see some of the shots and the stoop life and stuff, and it brings me back to like my college days.
Yeah, of course. That's good. You're gonna have an emotional connection.
Love that.
Yeah. So let's start with the young Calogero, and I thought what was very interesting was the early perceptions he had of Sonny.
Yeah.
And he said everybody loved him.
Yeah.
Now his dad pushed back against that.
To love him or fear him, right?
Love him or fear him, or respect him.
Right.
There's this idea of questioning whether or not he's loved or respected. Sonny chimes in on that later.
Yeah.
He's like, he actually is like, is a good question. He's like, it's ideally you would be both, but if I have to choose, it'd be fear because fear lasts longer.
Yeah.
And I think Sonny Sonny had a heart. When he talked about Machiavelli and the concept of availability and being there.
Yeah.
He's like, the people love me. They're happy that I'm here because they feel protected and safe. And then the people that fear me know that I'm here, so they're not going to screw around.
Yeah.
So, but he was talking about there is a subsection of people from his perspective that he believes loved him.
Right.
And I think that includes, Calogero, but also I think it includes Carmine. When he shot that guy.
Yeah.
I think he wasn't even part of that argument.
Yeah.
He just pulled his gun out and protected him and shot him.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you could argue in the mafia culture, like, is that authentic? Because it's basically you're paying for protection.
Yeah.
But I think in his mind, it was a warped version of loving them.
Yes.
He wanted to be a father.
Right.
And there was a purity
I
to
agree.
his relationship with Calogero where it wasn't, he didn't have to, he didn't pay him anything.
No.
But it's natural to want to be a father,
Right.
to have family. This is always the complex, interesting question about mafia culture, which is immorality, betrayal, crime. I love you.
I know.
I love you. You're part of my family.
Yeah.
I'll die for you. Some things you don't mess with. I loved Lorenzo. What a great scene.
That scene where
I
he's
never
like,
step out of line. You know this. Ask anyone in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
But you don't mess with a man's family. You're wrong.
Yeah.
And then he respected that.
Yeah, he respected that.
He's like, should I go whack him?
No.
No, leave him
He said,
alone.
let him alone. He said, leave him alone.
It's not clear
I know.
what in the Italian mafia culture, like where betrayal begins and family ends and all that
Right.
kind of stuff.
Right. It was very interesting. I think the Lorenzo Sonny dynamic of the movie is amazing. I think Sonny very much respects Lorenzo in a weird way. Almost you envies him that he's a hardworking man. Yeah, he drives a bus. He's not making all the money.
Oh, it's a defense mechanism. Sonny's criticism
Is
a defense mechanism.
Yeah.
Because he knows the truth.
yes.
And I might as well jump into it now. This is the thing that I've talked to people about in therapy. The truth that Lorenzo puts out there
Yeah.
is it doesn't take strength to pull a trigger.
Right.
It's easy to be a bad person. It's hard to be a good person.
It is.
You know who the tough guy is? Your father.
Yeah.
The man who drives the bus.
Get up every morning and work.
Yes. and I think on some deep down level, Sonny knew that. And he was
yes.
jealous, and he did admire Lorenzo for that.
He did. And he's like, you know what? This guy wakes up every day. He works hard. He's got this kid who I wish I had this kid.
Yes. In fact, I'm going to make him my kid.
I'm gonna
Here
make
comes
him
my boy.
Here comes my boy.
Yeah.
You know, and I do think that the movie, it had some of these scenes with Lorenzo and Sonny that there's this like weird, not like a shift of power back and forth, but it's like Sonny would kind of like impose his mobster power at moments.
But I think only for public reasons. He couldn't let
Yes.
Lorenzo trump him.
Yes.
Because other people were watching, and he
Yep.
had to like maintain like that respect.
Yep.
But privately, he's like, let him go. He's
Yeah.
all right. He's all right.
Yeah. And I did like that a lot. And I do think it is just so funny how, man, it's an amazing cap to the movie. How then Lorenzo shows up at the wake
Yes.
with his son,
Yes.
and he's paying his respects.
Yes.
Even though this guy was the source of all of Lorenzo's like
I know.
frustrations for.
Well, he was really honest and authentic. And if you notice, by the way, right then was the first time he called his son C.
I didn't notice that.
He goes, come on, C, let's go. He never called him
no,
C the
never.
whole film, but he honored that kind of dynamic between the two of them. But throughout the film, I was, as a dad with a son, myself, I was angry at Sonny
Yep.
for stealing the innocence of
Yes.
C.
Yeah.
And that's what Lorenzo admits later on. He's like, I never hated you. I'm just upset that you made my son grow up so quickly. You see that, like
That was a good line.
yeah, that tension that becomes true later on in C, like it begins like he's still like a little boy. He loves the Yankees.
I know.
He hugs his dad. They have a good, loving connection. It's a good father-son relationship, and then it's spoiled.
Yeah.
What do you like Mickey Mantle for? He's not going to pay your rent. You know?
I know.
And it like spoils
Yeah.
that innocence. And as a father, I have a 5-year-old son, and I'm like, I do not want the world to destroy my child's innocence. Do you feel that way as a dad?
Totally. Yeah. No, I think it's so true. And then it just like expanded on that, like just because I feel like all of a sudden he's ingrained and now he's seeing all these things, and he did, you grow up so quickly. But no, I feel that way as a dad for sure. I feel that way, I see it with some of our friends that have older kids too. And it's like in a weird way, sometimes when we get together, not that innocence is stolen. And it's like we have a great group of friends and their kids are great, but it's like I even noticed that with my kids, like looking up to like, and of course that's like how
They're exposed to things before you're ready for your child to be exposed to them.
Yeah, and it's like, but they look up to that. It's like, oh, this person's older. They're cooler. You know, they have this.
Which is C versus to Sonny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I was thinking too about how in the 60s, I don't think there was as much television. So in the neighborhood, you think about those kids, like who are their role models? They weren't watching TV.
No.
So it was these mobster type of characters that they tried to emulate.
Right. The stoop life, man. The stoop life is a real thing, and I think it's so cool.
There's this weird kind of bridge too with C, where after he doesn't identify him, Sonny in the lineup.
Yep.
And before it fast forwards to the future, people start showing him respect in the neighborhood, and they give him free fruit and stuff. And he's like really attracted to that.
Yes.
It's a very, very interesting question about, from a masculine male perspective, this question of respect.
Yeah.
And I know of a study that asked like 4,000 men, would you rather be respected or loved? What do you think they predominantly said?
Probably respected, I guess.
Respected. That's because in the male psychology, there's no difference.
Yeah, right.
In a female psychology, there can be.
Yeah.
Because it's like, you think of women that are like, in abusive relationships, but think, oh, he still loves me, but he beats me up every night or something. Right. But for a man, we can't really fathom that.
Right.
If you don't respect me, you don't love me.
Right.
That's why young C saw what seemed like respect, but Lorenzo argued was just fear, seemed like respect towards Sonny in the neighborhood. And he's like, everybody loves you. Everybody loves him, Dad, just like everyone loves you on the bus. I don't understand. And he's like, you will when you get older.
You when you get older.
But there are these subtle differences of like respect and love and fear.
It's true. It's really interesting.
I know that. Like, when my dog listens to me, I'm like, I love you so much. It's like that obedience, that like respect I feel.
Yes. I wonder about, like, you mentioned it earlier. And I do think that, there's less of this now. And obviously that mob culture has kind of like gone away. But there is that weird dynamic that I feel like could get fleshed out like in a conversation like this, or we can like talk more about it. But it's like, and I saw it like living in the Bronx on Arthur Avenue. It's like these mobsters who are part of the mafia, and they're doing things that are illegal, and there's crime.
Yeah.
And there's things that are happening that most people would not agree with. But then because many of them are like religious, right? And because they have this sense of like, okay, they're protecting, it's like they almost get away with it, with being a criminal, essentially.
Yeah. I think it's a heightened level of what exists in human relationships anyway. Like in a healthy community of people, generally everyone is centered around the same sort of shared goal of communion and relationship and connection. We are a community.
Right.
That's what happens in the mafia culture.
Right.
And occasionally, though, people will hurt you and betray you.
Yep.
The only difference, though, is when you're in the mafia level, the consequences are different.
Right.
Because the content of what's going on in that community is dangerous. But on a human level, the same thing happens in communities. It's just like betrayal here with guns and death and crime is different than like, oh, you told someone something I told you not to tell them. You know what I mean?
Slap on the wrist.
Right.
Yeah.
Like it's the same thing though on a human level. It's just that because of the crime and the danger, it's like it just happens. There's just different consequences.
There's like a love though. Like I feel like this in America, there's like an obsession with the mob, like the mob boss, and
because
like
it's confusing. I think it's so interesting that there's love and danger mingled.
Yeah,
I think there's something about love and danger being mingled together. I mean, from a deep psychological level, when I start to get weird into psychology and stuff, anxiety exists because of disconnection. All anxiety and depression, I mean, I'm going to get real weird here for a second. All anxiety and depression is ultimately fear of death at the bottom level. Because death is the one thing that I have to do alone. You can't go with me when I die. I can't go with you when you die. It reflects the ultimate separation. Right. Now, from a Catholic Christian perspective, you could say, well, even that you don't have to do alone. Christ goes through the doors of death with you. But if you don't have faith, it's still like it's the most frightening thing there is. And so the antidote then to anxiety is communion and connection. Right. And so those things are like kind of flip sides of the same coin.
Right.
So when you feel anxiety and depression, you talked earlier about how you were in a difficult place. What'd you do? You called your mom.
Right.
You called your mom. It's people and connection that helps with those problems with mood.
Right.
And so, I mean, to get even weirder, you think about people's like sexual behaviors and sexual choices and, like sex with asphyxiation. That's like a fetish, right? It's like, I'm like dying, but I'm so aroused because of the emotional connection that happens in that context. It's like the scarier it is, the more intense the love and communion and connection and consolation. So I think like the mafia life, it's like that intersection of like fear, danger, scary, and I love you and you're my family. And we're connected. It's like the antidote to the fear, but they play back and forth.
Play back and forth.
So it's so interesting to us.
It's so interesting. It's so confusing.
It is.
Yeah.
It's really confusing.
And you go back and like I even think about like, I don't know, when we were just chatting about this stuff, like the show Sopranos and like Tony Soprano and how he was like such a loved character. But here's a guy who was just like would kill people.
He's a sociopath.
Yeah.
But we rooted for him.
Well, we rooted for him.
Because he was a family man.
We rooted for him.
Because he was a family man. And we can all identify with love and family.
Yeah.
All right. Let's there's so much we can talk about in this film. Let's kind of like jump forward a little bit.
Yeah.
So Elder C is now I think 17, 18 years old. And you have his friendships and the Deuce is Wild and those guys who are just, I mean, I don't even have much to say about them. They're just trying to be mobsters and, whatever. And you do have the question of, we should probably address the racism in the film. The N-word was hard to watch.
Yes.
It was hard to watch. It like came out of nowhere and I felt like I got hit in the face.
I know. And because we are now in a point in time, which is amazing that is so seldomly used, or at least
where we are.
At least where we are.
In the country.
And I think that probably even when I first watched this movie, I think I probably first watched this movie over 20 years ago when I first saw it. It wasn't as big of a shock factor.
Yes.
To hear that word versus like now it is. I agree with you.
Yes.
And it's alarming. So, the race component
was tough.
It was tough. It's a circumstance that's the time.
Yeah. I mean, it's a piece of art. It's reflecting the way things were.
That's how things were.
It's still hard to hear.
Yeah.
I thought Jane was so progressive. She was like, I like Italians. Like it wasn't even a big deal.
Yeah.
There was like an innocence to it. And, and then you think about the two father figures, and actually Sonny was a bit more progressive than Lorenzo.
He was.
Yeah. Lorenzo was like, well, we want to marry our own. I'm not racist, but we marry our own, which by today's standards, we would say you're racist. But Sonny was like, it doesn't matter. The only thing that he calls his friends jerk offs. Your friends are a bunch of jerk offs.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The only thing that matters is what the two of you make you happy.
Yeah.
That's a very progressive view by
progressive.
Sonny. This is so funny about Lorenzo and Sonny is like they're kind of like neck and neck, but in some ways one of them is healthier than the other, but not in all areas.
Not in all areas.
No,
it toggles.
Lorenzo is like controlling.
Yep.
That's not good. He's so controlling. Sonny is he exposes him to gangster life, but he wants to help him.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. So the racism question is messy, and then you see this discrepancy between Sonny's perspective on race and Lorenzo's, and I think Sonny's healthier and more progressive and good. And then the actually how it plays out is pretty raw.
Yeah.
His friends die in the car. This is something I want to talk to you about. That car ride. When he's in the car with his friends.
Yeah.
He got swept up in it. It's the Molotov cocktails are like by their feet.
Yep.
I've been in that car.
Yes.
Have you been in that car?
Yes.
I've been in that car like, uh-oh.
Yep.
I'm with the wrong people.
Yep.
In the wrong place.
Yep.
I'm just a good kid. Like the little boy in me comes out, like, get me out of here. But I'm frozen and I can't do anything.
And you can't. And they actually the camera panned to him. It was perfect. And they showed him, and he was kind of just sitting there in the middle, and you could tell he was just like, what do I do now? Deer in headlights.
Nothing I can do. Let me out. Like he could.
He could have said, I'm out of here, guys. Chastised by his friends, made fun of. No longer part of the crew.
In his whole world.
World.
He lived in that neighborhood. I mean, the tremendous amount of courage, but I could feel the fear in me. Like I was brought back to those moments.
Way too. Yes, I've had that moment where I'm like, I should not be in this car. I'm part of the wrong situation right now.
Yes. You know what's funny? You talk about your experience in college with being in Fordham. For a year, I went to Sacred Heart University,
Yeah, I remember.
which was right up the Hutch.
Yeah.
It was right up the Merritt Parkway. And one of my closest friends was from the Bronx. And I found myself caught in situations like that where just kind of the little boy in me is like, how did I get here? I don't want to be a part of this. I love these friends, but this is beyond me. And I'm terrified right now.
Yep.
And like, please someone rescue me or help me.
Yeah.
Talk about moments of prayer. Those were moments of prayer for me. Like, please protect me from something terrible happening. In this case, in the film, something terrible did happen.
Yeah.
But I felt like I was protected in many times in my life where something terrible could have happened.
Right.
But I somehow, the circumstances got me out of it.
Yep.
You remember moments like that?
100%. Oh my God. Yeah. On multiple occasions. Yeah. I mean, it's just, thank God. And we're both here talking now. So this is good news for us.
Yeah.
But yeah, the racism part, like, man, yeah, it was a matter of the times that they were, that the movie was filmed in the 60s. And that was those neighborhoods, the segregation was a big thing back then. And that was a thing. But it was hard to watch. It was even hard to watch some of, when one of sees that knucklehead friend, I forget his name, when he pulled the kid off the bike and they got into that big melee.
So
like, that was an awful
For
scene.
no reason. He's just riding his bike.
Yeah, just riding his bike. Yeah.
Yeah. And then like the flip side of that, I like how the black community in this was not painted as victims.
Right.
Like they were just as sort of forceful in their response. Now, was either side healthy with the racism? No. But they weren't just victims. Like they pushed back. And the extreme version of that was, I mean, like the friends were like lit up on fire in a car. And the community surrounding it was like celebrating it.
Yeah.
And, criticizing and attacking.
They look better now or something. There was some comment made from the peanut gallery. Remember when they were, and it's like, yeah.
And they were like throwing things at C and like telling him to get out of here and say, get out of here, white boy. And like, I mean, that's like racism in its unhealthiest form. But like, it shows that there's like both sides of it.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not bridging.
No,
connection.
I know. And just like, wow, like that scene at the end when his friends were obviously in the body bags basically. And it's like.
No sensitivity to that.
No. And they're telling C to get out and stuff. I mean, like the level of hatred.
Yes.
Is pure and like very uncomfortable. But I think it's a good part of the movie for people who now live in this environment where most times that's not the case. I know we still obviously have racism exists.
Sure.
But to know that like literally in New York City, in the Bronx, at one point in time, you had hatred at that level.
Well, I think, New York,
That's wild.
Depending on where we are in the country, that kind of hatred still
exists.
In an overt way.
Yes.
In an explicit way like that. I think there's a lot of implicit racism that goes on, even in the Northeast. But explicitly that was there to the point where there'd be violence. And it's also understandable.
Yep.
Like, the kid was riding his bike and he got knocked off his bike and got beat up. So you can see where it creates space for hatred to breed.
Totally. Totally.
It's sad. It's awful. I mean, but it's a part of the film. It's interesting that it was almost like shoehorned into the film, which up until that point was about like being a good person or being a gangster.
Right.
And then, let's toss in racism.
Right. I know.
Yeah.
But a good, so Lauren, I was wanting her to watch the film with me and then things went awry because she started watching, but the kids were still up, but it's not a movie where you can have children in the room. There's too much stuff
a lot of
going on.
F-bombs.
F-bombs, but also like violence.
Yeah.
So the kids go to sleep. Then one of the kids comes back down. She went up. Lauren fell asleep in Joy's bed. So I was like, all right.
Yeah.
But she asked me this morning. She's like, because she'd never seen the movie before. I was like, man, I was really wanting you to watch with me. But she's asking, honestly, I hit upon those things. I was like, it's the movie essentially. It's between being a good person or a bad person, like that mobster component. Then you have the love story with C and Jane, which I love. Honestly, I still think that scene where he's walking her from the school back to her apartment, that like you said, the vulnerability and everything.
Shabab.
Loved that scene. And then the racism component just brings in, it's got a lot of different dynamics, which is very cool.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about the ending of the whole thing.
Yeah.
You have the tragedy of his friends dying, and then he goes back into the bar, and he sees that one face that's not smiling.
I know.
And he sees the death of his father figure, one of his father figures, in very slow motion. His father gets shot. Sonny gets shot. It's crushing for him. You go to the funeral, and then, actually, hold on. Let's rewind a little bit.
Yeah.
Because something very important happens with Sonny believing for a moment that C had betrayed him.
Oh, I know.
And he grabs him up against the side of the building.
Yep.
And he's like, what did you do?
Yeah.
And he's like, and C just starts crying. He's like, what are you talking about? You're a father figure to me. I
father
love you. Why would I
figure.
ever do that to you? And I think it wakes Sonny up. So after that, he saves him from the car.
Yes.
But like, it just says something about his own defense mechanisms and of like how terrified he is of the world, how he can't trust
the world. Can't trust anybody.
Nobody.
But then C crying and looking at him, being like, "What are you talking about? You're like a father to me.
Yeah.
What do you mean?"
Yeah. And then I think the moment of enlightenment for C when they're driving in the car afterwards, he's like, "Do you ever think about the fact that I could have been blown up and that the bomb was in there beforehand? You didn't even think about me? Why? Like you can't trust you can't trust I can't trust anyone. Not for me. I can't trust anyone." He's like, "Not me." That was the turning point. I'm not going to live the way you live.
Yep.
I'm not going to be
I like
you.
that.
He went right back, like he became his father's son.
He became Lorenzo.
Yeah, he became his father's son in that moment.
Yep.
You know, but he still loved Sonny because Sonny did save his life.
Yes.
And then now we go right back to the bar scene.
I know.
He gets shot, awful, and then we go to the funeral. What was your perspective on the funeral scene?
You know, the funeral scene I thought was a great scene, but that bar, I like what they did in the film where they captured the shooter in slow motion. You know, everyone's in the bar hemming, hawing, laughing. Sonny's calling, "C, come on over here. Yeah, get my boy, come over." And everyone's having a great time, and C can see that someone's approaching Sonny and is stoic. And he could tell right off the gate that this person is out of place and like new, and he started yelling, "No." And so like that scene I thought was so moving and is like crazy. And then you flip right, you know, you're in the funeral home.
It's worth mentioning who that shooter was.
Yeah, he was the son
of the person that Sonny shot all those
Sonny
years
shot
ago.
8 years prior or whatever it was. Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, which I thought that was kind of amazing. I was like full circle. And that's when Carmine, Joe Pesci's character comes back to light. So I think two things on that I love. Number one, the scene in the funeral home. It was very clear to everyone, obviously, how close the dynamic between Sonny and C was, because C was like a VIP basically.
Yeah.
In the funeral home.
Yeah.
People knew this is like basically Sonny's son.
Yes.
So and I loved, we talked about it already, but I loved that Lorenzo came to the funeral home and paid his respects. I thought that was like a perfect bow on Lorenzo as like a family man with someone with values. Like he understands. Like that was a great moment. And then at the end, the best part for me of that whole scene was when Carmine, Joe Pesci, is telling C that if he needs anything, he can come to the bar. Come see me. I'll be here now.
A temptation to go back to that life.
You know, I'm here now for some time. Like you can come see me. I know Sonny's told me all about you. I know how close the two of you were. If you need anything, honestly anything, he's like, you come and see me. But then C quickly responds back saying like,
I'm gonna take a break from the
take
bar.
a break from the bar. I love that. And I think that like was like it kind of tied it up in saying like he understood, like it ended in the death of Sonny, like he saw.
Yes.
Full cycle. Like this is the life. This is basically what Sonny was telling me.
Yes.
And it came to fruition.
Yes.
And then he was saying at the end to Carmine.
There was such a beautiful moment too, because what something that Sonny said to C was, "Nobody cares. Nobody cares." And then he's like, "You're wrong about this one, Sonny. I care."
Yeah.
Our relationship was real.
Yep.
This wasn't built on power dynamics and crime and money.
He said, "You're wrong about this one.
You're wrong about this. I care." And I think Carmine cared.
And Carmine cared.
Carmine cared because he saved his life
years
ago. But it was a real moment of love that their relationship was actually authentic. Sonny was a father to him. Sonny saw him as a son.
Right.
And even the way he talked to him was like he was almost preparing him to be a mob boss.
Right.
Not a henchman.
No.
He said, "What are you gonna punch this guy? You're gonna attack this guy that owes you $20? Don't listen to these I don't even know what he called him, but like henchmen basically. Like there's a higher level here." Sonny was brilliant. He studied. When he went to jail, he read books.
That's
he
what
said,
he said.
"There's 3 things you can do in jail," and then he goes, "What did you do?" "None of them. I read." But Sonny. He was brilliant, and he took him in as a son, and there was a real moment of love, and there's like a salvation for Sonny in that dynamic.
Totally.
Last point of the whole film before he says, this is just another Bronx Tale, which is worth commenting on because he normalizes the whole thing.
Yeah.
Because it was a fantastic tale, but he was like, this is just
another,
life here.
Another Bronx Tale.
But right before that, he says, I did finally understand. Because over and over again, both of his father's figures said, you'll understand when you get older. And the thing that he understood was two things. The first was, these men taught me how to give and receive unconditional love, which is the point of life.
Right.
It is the meaning of life to give and receive unconditional love, to open up ourselves and show who we are and hope to God that someone says, I love you anyway in all your mess and who you are.
Right.
So that was beautiful. And then the second one was the wasted talent comment.
I know.
And like Sonny was wasted talent. I think in a way, I wonder if Lorenzo believed himself to be wasted talent. I know,
yeah. It's
wasted
a good
talent.
point, yeah.
Yeah, like he's just a bus driver. But he was brilliant. He was kind of beyond his station, and he made the best of his station. Not that there's anything wrong with being a bus driver.
No.
But like he was like an elite bus driver.
Right.
Like I wonder if he thought that he should have been more than what he was.
Yep.
But was limited by his capacity. Just like he talked about his parents. Would you ever talk about your grandfather that way?
Yes.
He did the best that he could with what he had, and like the circumstances made it so he could only be a bus driver, but he had so much talent, so much gift at the level where he could compete with Sonny, who was the mob boss. But both of them were basically saying to C, like, don't you be us.
Don't you be us. Right.
Don't you be us.
Right.
You have talent. Don't waste a kid.
Don't waste it.
And that was the ultimate level that he needed, the ultimate level and the ultimate meaning and theme that he needed to learn as he's about to embark on adulthood.
Adulthood, exactly.
Yeah.
It was such a nice cap to the movie. I think they killed it at the end there. That ending was like perfect.
So good.
He said he had enough with the bar for now, right? So he was like, I think I've had enough, like,
yeah.
I think I'm taking a break from the bar.
Yeah. He's in love with Jane. He doesn't care what anyone thinks anymore.
He moves on. He learned. He said I understood now. Like now I finally know.
Yeah.
And but then at the end, like you said, they ended with it was just like another Bronx Tale. It's kind of just like, all right, well, listen, life goes on, and this is just another story.
It just shows the importance of everyone's experience.
Everyone.
Like if you enter into anyone's life, they have their own drama. They have their own kingdom with which they are kings,
right?
Or queens.
Right.
And everyone's experience is so important to them.
Yep.
And to minimize other people's experience is a problem.
Right.
And to just honor like the uniqueness and drama and story and narrative of everyone's life, that's the way to approach life.
Right.
And that's the big picture takeaway from this. This is what a story, but it's one of many.
Right. Totally.
Well, hey, thanks for coming on. We didn't get a lot of time to talk about your current business adventures. We talked about tennis. We love your tennis.
Round two.
Yeah, but I'm just quickly plug what you're doing. What are you doing? I know you don't. It's not enough time, but like just quick plug. Give us a minute of what you're doing.
I'll give a quick teaser. 1 minute. Happy to do it. So obviously, first and foremost, I mean, I am still at my job in finance, wealth management, have my clients, and that comes first. But I have, over this last year, embarked on a couple really, really cool business ventures. Firstly, is a tennis club here in Simsbury. So RFL Simsbury.
Simsbury, Connecticut.
Indoor tennis club, 4-court facility. My business partner and I have an incredible staff, great programming. So this was just like everything came together at perfect timing where my doubles partner, a good close tennis contact of mine, was looking to become an owner-operator of a tennis club. He came from Chicago in the Midwest. I happen to have a lot of connections here, was able to make things happen and helped find a deal with a local club that fell into place, and it's perfect.
That's awesome.
We took over, so we basically took over the club in July, and we have had a full fall of programming, clinics, lessons, programming, leagues, tournaments. So we are like kicking butt. It's an awesome tennis facility. So that's number one. So that brings me back to like my passion of tennis.
Yeah.
And I'm now a part owner of a tennis club, which is super cool for me.
That's so amazing.
Which is awesome. Yeah. So to be able to have that vested interest. And then through another connection and the growing popularity of pickleball in the United States
and big, isn't it?
And around the world. Yep. It's huge. Fastest growing sport in the country. So we signed a lease on August 1st to take over a former Walmart. So this is now happening throughout the country. So this is formerly a Walmart. So think about an 80,000 square foot footprint. Used to be Walmart, and now we've rolled out 12 championship grade pickleball courts, and we have this business venture, Blaze Pickle. So we started our open house, and grand opening was at the beginning of October. So we have 12 indoor.
2023.
October 2023. We have 12 indoor championship grade pickleball courts with a roster of not only lessons, programming, open play. We're going to have tournaments. I think we have 12 to 15 people on staff now. So this is a separate venture where I'm an equity stakeholder in this pickleball business. And if the model goes well, we're kind of looking at this throughout the winter months. And basically the idea here is post-pandemic, there's a lot of these big box stores in general, facilities that have become vacant. And pickleball is a fast-growing sport where there's a high demand, and there's just not enough space in New England, in Connecticut, once the weather turns, people need to go indoors.
Yeah.
And there's just not enough pickleball courts to hit the amount of demand that it has.
Yeah.
So if it goes well, then we would look to expand and have Blaze Pickle occupy other indoor facilities. So so that just started. It just started in October, and
you have a big indoor season ahead of you.
Big indoor season.
That's great.
With tennis and pickle.
That's so good.
And both so far are going well, fingers crossed. But at the end of the day, it's exciting for me because, I mean, the tennis piece obviously is something I'm passionate about. That club is doing great. It's going to be there for a long time. The pickleball venture, I do love pickle. I'm a fan of the sport. I play it. But for me, the pickleball venture is almost more of like, from an opportunistic standpoint, business opportunity, capitalizing on a trend in a sport that's growing and trying to be ahead of that growth.
Yeah. And it's like an adjacent step from tennis.
It is. Yeah, racket sport. And there's synergies there. We're sharing resources between the two clubs because my partner on the tennis venture is also a partner with the pickleball venture. So there's shared resources there. So it's
great.
Symbiotic, if you will.
I will.
But yeah, they're both cool. So yeah, maybe if I'm lucky enough to come back on the show at some point, I'll have an update on those.
That's awesome. Yeah. We'd love to have you back.
Yeah.
Really appreciate you coming on.
My man.